Hi everyone, welcome to Salesforce Topics channel. In this session, let us discuss the remaining trigger examples and how to identify which trigger event is apt for the requirement and the implementation of the remaining examples. Here the requirement is if the service request is undeleted, then owner of the vehicle has to be notified with an email. That means if the user is restoring the already deleted record, then in that case Salesforce performs undelete DML operation on this record. We can trigger an email over here, that is after it has successfully undeleted that record. That means on this step it performs the undelete operation, and within the same transaction we are sending an email after system performed undeletion. Since this requirement is talking about undelete, we can filter out remaining all the trigger events, and for this requirement the perfect trigger event is after undelete. Implementation of this requirement is very easy. That is, after undeletion we have to notify the owner of the vehicle with an email. So for this I am going to add after undelete trigger event, and corresponding when block after undelete. We are going to write one more method to take care of the after undelete. So let me take one method is after undelete SR actions. Let's see what are all the trigger context variables that we will get. Let me add this method in the handler. We will see what are all the parameters that we can add here by seeing the values of trigger context variables for after undelete. To see those values, let's deploy these changes. And we have added after undelete, so it will print the after undelete trigger context variable values. I'm going to recycle bin to restore one value, that is to undelete one SR. Once I click on restore, it will restore, and it internally it performs the undelete DML operation. Now let's see the logs. Operation type is after undelete, and if you see the values, it has new values in the new and new map. That is, these values have been populated from recycle bin, and it does not have old and old map. As we know, at this point of time there are no values in the database. Hence we can pass two variables, trigger.new and trigger.new map. It's not a rule, we can pass the other variable values also, but there is no use. That's why I'm passing only the new and new map. Here I am going to capture these into the recycled source and recycled source map. Now we have to iterate this recycled SRs, and for each recycled service request we have to fetch the vehicle's owner's email ID, and we have to notify with an email. So for this we can place the same logic, and instead of deleted SRs we are taking the recycled SRs, and subject is going to be service request has been restored. Your service request number is restored. With this code, it will notify the vehicle's owner with an email whenever his service request is being restored. Now let me restore one service request. One service request has been restored. That service request's vehicle's owner should have been notified with an email. Yes, service request has been restored for the SR0016. That is, this service request SR0016 has been restored from recycle bin. And our after UnDelete trigger events custom logic has sent an email to this owner's email ID. Now let me remove this debug just to understand the trigger context variable and its values. For each and every trigger event I have added this. I am deleting this debug statement, and our trigger class now will look like this one with all the trigger events. The main advantage if you go for the trigger handlers is, if you see the trigger handlers are actual classes, you will get the benefit of actual classes like static variables with sharing, without sharing, inherited sharing, etc. But instead of going for the trigger handler, if you would have written entire code inside trigger, you will lose the benefits of class because our trigger is not an actual class. For example, like this, you will not be able to add any methods into the trigger. Hence, it is always better to have our implementation logic inside another class, like our service request trigger handler. Please note that there is no rule saying that we have to send these parameters only for our trigger handler. We can send any number of parameters, any parameters from here to our trigger handler. And also, if you don't pass these parameters, anyway the trigger and its context variables are available in the handler. That means without these parameters, we can directly access trigger context variables like this. Accessing these trigger context variables inside handler like this is valid. The only difference if you access the trigger context variables like this is, for these four parameters, that is new map, old map, the object type is going to be like a S object instead of our specific object, in this case service underscore request. So if you use this trigger.new or trigger.new map or trigger.old or trigger.old map directly like this, then you will have to typecast to your respective custom object. Instead of typecasting those things again inside your method, it is better to send as a parameters, and anyway in the parameters we are going to take it as a our custom object type, so that it will automatically typecast it and handed over to the our methods. Thanks for watching. We will meet in the next session.